My name is Miriam Hale. I'm 70 years old, a widow, and for most of my adult life a nurse, the sort of woman who knew how to dress a wound, calm a fever, and coax frightened families toward steadier ground. Nothing in all those years taught me how to weather the sentence that sliced through me the night before my son's wedding. I was standing behind her as she admired herself in the mirror, the gown spilling across the bedroom like a hymn to innocence. My future daughter-in-law, Sienna, leaned close enough that her perfume made my throat prickle and breathed into my ear. The best present would be if you disappeared from our family. She smiled the way people do when they raise a glass. Then she turned back to the glass and smoothed the bodice with hands that had never scrubbed a floor or steadied a shaking patient at 3 a.m. My son, Andrew, Drew, since he was 6, stood nearby. He didn't object. He didn't step between us. His gaze slid to the carpet as if I'd already vanished. In that instant, I touched the silver ring I wear, Walter's ring. 46 years ago, he promised I would never be made to feel small. Yet there I stood, in a house my sacrifices had underwritten, being told to vanish like an unwanted shadow. One day before the ceremony, she said those words. By the next morning, their $3.5 million villa in Paradise Valley, Arizona, would be on the market. The reception would be canceled, and what I left in that vacant, echoing home would make both of them tremble. Before I explain how, pause with me. If you're listening, tap like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you won't miss what comes next. Your support tells me voices like mine still matter, that women of my generation aren't invisible. Back in that room, the veil shimmered under a lamp. She lifted it like a crown. I stayed still, breath tight, pulse knocking against my throat. Drew's quiet hurt more than Sienna's cruelty. He jammed his hands in his pockets like a schoolboy caught between two teachers. "Say something, Andrew," I whispered. My lips barely moved. "This is supposed to be our weekend, Mom," he answered at last. His voice carried no warmth. "Please don't make it harder." My own son, the child I rocked through bronchitis and sat beside when his appendix came out, now implying that my existence poisoned his happiness. I swallowed the blade in my chest. Nursing had taught me to steady soldiers, new mothers, men who thought they were dying. Yet my own family made me feel as flimsy as tissue. Sienna's eyes flicked toward me in the mirror. "Don't take it personally," she said, breezy as champagne. "We just want a celebration without negative energy." Negative energy. That's what she called me after I poured my life into their dream. Walter's ring pressed a half moon into my palm. The silver had dulled with time, but its weight was still a promise. "Never let them treat you small," his voice said somewhere behind my ribs. I heard my own voice surprise me with its calm. "Where exactly should I go?" Sienna shrugged and admired her nails as though the question were trivial. "A hotel. Maybe visit one of your sisters. Honestly, Miriam, anywhere else." The dismissal hung like smoke. Drew cleared his throat. "It's more her place now," he muttered. "She's been handling the money. You just helped us once." Once. That word burned. The entire down payment, $350,000 from selling the red brick house Walter and I had kept in Burlington, Vermont, compressed into a single, stingy adverb. I scanned the marble counters, the hand-carved staircase, the garden beyond the glass. Every surface carried my fingerprints. To them, I was merely a smudge to be wiped away before photographs. Something inside didn't shatter. It clicked, like a lock set in place. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply whispered, "You'll get your gift." Neither of them recognized a promise when they heard one. Her once dragged me back to the final day in Burlington, to the house that had held us for over 40 years. Walter's fingerprints were in the window frames. The stairs creaked to the tempo of his boots. We'd planted a maple the spring Drew was born, and by the time I sold the house, its branches shaded half the block. On closing day, I walked room to room in a silence that rang. I ran my hand along the banister Walter had sanded, pressed my palm to the kitchen wall where pencil marks recorded grandchildren's heights. In the spare bedroom we'd kept ready for Drew's visits that dwindled after Sienna arrived. My eyes stung. Still, I told myself I was doing a noble thing. Walter used to say, "We put down roots here, Mir. Don't let anyone yank them up." I decided uprooting could be an act of love. The sale brought $350,000, decades of scrimping, lunch breaks taken standing, shift differentials for nights nobody else wanted. I handed Drew and Sienna the bank check with trembling fingers and a practiced smile. "This is your start," I told them. "A home should begin with stability." They promised I'd always have a room, always have a seat. Now, in the villa that money built, I felt granite counters I'd chosen and invoices I'd paid rise up like witnesses. I thought of walking the lot before there were walls, imagining Walter beside me, proud that we were helping our boy. In Sienna's mouth, all of that became some money, once. The red brick house had never been grand. The kitchen was narrow. The upstairs bathroom breathed a little winter through a tired window frame. But it was steady. When Walter's heart weakened, I took him up those stairs, bracing his shoulders without counting the strain. Our house held his last breath, like a candle cupped against the wind. Trading it for this villa felt like swapping memory for marble, roots for glare. And tonight, Sienna wanted me to pretend none of it mattered. I walked the halls I'd walked when they were still blueprints. The dining chandelier glittered above a table where I had never belonged. The terrace would be packed with people who mispronounced my name and asked insincere questions. Upstairs, the guest room, always the guest room, never my room, reminded me I was a temporary object in the home my money secured. I paused at the mantel. A glossy portrait of Drew and Sienna beamed down. No Walter, no me. I had been erased with precision. I whispered to the ring. I poured the concrete, and they built walls high enough to shut me out. By giving so much, I had also given them permission to forget. Listening to their laughter echo from the kitchen, I understood. The roots Walter and I planted had been pulled up. In their place grew a showpiece that would never be mine. Perhaps, I thought, it could be a tool. The warning signs weren't new. They were tiny cuts I'd taught myself to ignore, the way a nurse stops noticing her own aching feet after a 12-hour shift. On our 45th anniversary, I laid 2 plates and set Walter's photo at the head like he might still say grace. Drew called an hour before dessert. Sienna had surprised him with reservations. I ate a wedge of pie alone, wrapped the rest as though my son might still appear. I touched the ring and whispered to Walter that I understood. Love marches forward and forgets to turn its head. When they showed me the model brochure for the villa, Sienna laughed at my suggestion we choose durable fixtures. "We're not designing a hospital suite," she joked. The message was clear. My life smelled like antiseptic. Theirs was chandeliers and imported tile. I wrote the deposit anyway, told myself I was underwriting joy. The first night I stayed over, Sienna paraded friends past my half-unpacked suitcase. "This is the guest room," she sang. Later, she posted renovation photos captioned, "Our home, our dream, our sweat." No tag for me. When I asked to place a photo of Walter on the mantel, she said, "Minimal lines, no clutter." There were jokes about my frugal habits. I rinsed jars and mended sleeves. Sienna called it nurse budgeting and toasted the punchline with rosé. When my chipped porcelain teacup sat drying by the sink, Drew suggested I keep it in my room. It clashed with the aesthetic. I held that cup the way my mother had taught me to hold hot things, firmly, but without fear. Holidays changed, too. I offered to make Walter's pumpkin pies. Sienna had a caterer. I brought one anyway, and watched it sweat at the edge of a marble buffet while guests dipped past with canapes. The week the custom drapes arrived, Sienna smiled and waved a receipt. She'd used my card without asking. "You're a treasure," she said, pecking my cheek. I swallowed the retort bubbling up, told myself true generosity doesn't need an audience. Then came a constant trickle of we language. We decided, we purchased, we agreed. When I asked for details, Drew said, "Sienna can explain." And she did. What color the backsplash should be when the landscapers came. What my role was. Warm when needed, quiet otherwise. I framed a photo of Walter holding newborn Drew. The gift never left its box. Sienna promised to find a frame that matched the decor. Months passed. No frame. I am not naive. Love negotiates. Aging requires dignity. I chose silence because I thought it protected my place. I told myself Sienna's edge was youth, not cruelty. That Drew's distance was stress, not abandonment. Nurses learn to let inflammation settle before changing a dressing. I gave it time. The night before the wedding, time ran out. The whisper didn't open a wound. It revealed one that had been festering under monogrammed towels. I pressed Walter's ring into my palm and felt the circle regulate my breath. The signs had always been there. I finally read them. The next step required more than patience. It required a plan. I sat in my car with the engine off. The villa glowed behind me like a staged set. Inside, they toasted a future purchased with other people's money. I pressed the ring until its imprint remained on my skin. In my phone was an old voicemail, Walter's last message before the hospital stay that ended everything. "Remember, Mir, never let them treat you small." I played it twice. Tears came and dried into a new hardness. They wanted a gift. I would give them one. It just wouldn't be wrapped the way they imagined. Under Catherine Wu in my contacts, an attorney I'd leaned on since Walter died, I found the number and prayed she'd answer on a Saturday night. "Miriam, is everything all right?" Catherine never used nicknames. Formality was armor. "I need every document tied to the villa," I said, voice steady. "Purchase deed, everything. Prepare a notice of intent to sell." Silence, then the whisper of papers. "You intend to sell your share?" They asked me to vanish. I won't evaporate empty-handed. "You own 30% recorded," she said. "If they can't buy you out, the property goes on the market. Are you certain?" I pictured Sienna's smirk, Drew's silence. I have never been more certain. When I ended the call, my hands shook, not from fear, but release. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for scraps of kindness. I was taking the wheel. The next call was colder. The Pinecrest Country Club receptionist answered on the second ring. "Good evening, catering. How can I help?" "This is Miriam Hale. I need to cancel tomorrow's reception. 240 guests." "Cancel?" Her voice hitched. "Ma'am, the kitchen is already prepping. The staff is confirmed. I signed the contract. The deposit is mine. I understand the penalties. Cancel." "Shouldn't you speak with the couple?" "The couple made it clear I wasn't welcome," I said, watching Sienna twirl through the lit window. "I'm honoring their request." Paper rustled. "It's under your name. Your card. I'll need written confirmation." "You have it now." I ended the call before she could coax a confession from me. By midnight, I was checking into a Hampton Inn off Scottsdale Road with a carry-on and a plan. The desk clerk asked if I was in town for a wedding. "Not anymore," I said, and almost laughed. Up in the room, I unpacked the things that meant home: a folded cotton nightgown, a creased photograph of Walter, my chipped porcelain cup nestled in a scarf. I filled the kettle. The crack in the glaze looked starker under hotel light, but the cup held. It always did. They wanted me gone, I told the ring. I'm gone. Tomorrow they'll learn what absence costs. Tea steadied me. The bedspread was thin, the air faintly of bleach, and still the room felt kinder than the villa had in months. Here I was, not an inconvenience. I was a woman with choices. I tried starting a letter. Dear Andrew, dear Sienna. My pen scraped. I crossed out lines and folded the page beneath the cup. Not every lesson needs an essay. Some need gravity. I switched off the lamp. Phoenix traffic sighed below. Inside, for the first time in a long time, I breathed without apologizing for it. The phone on the nightstand rattled against the wood at midnight. I let it ring out. Then my cell buzzed across the desk like a trapped cicada. Drew flashed, then stilled, then flashed again. On the fourth attempt, I answered. Sienna's voice knifed through the line, high, brittle, frantic. 240 guests, Miriam. Do you understand? Everyone will assume we're broke. They won't think you're broke, I said, calm enough to surprise myself. They'll think you were careless. Careless? The word crackled. You humiliated us. The entire club is talking. I canceled a party, Sienna. Not your marriage. You can still exchange vows. What you cannot do is spend my money while asking me to disappear. You're vindictive, she spat, punishing us because your feelings got hurt. No, I'm demonstrating that choices have price tags. You requested my absence. Tonight you have it, along with everything that travels with me. She screamed my name and hung up. I stared at the dark phone until it shivered again. Andrew. Mom, he said, voice exhausted rather than angry. A man pulled tight between two ropes. Why are you doing this? Over a bedroom? Not over a room, I said. Over respect. You've been part of every step. Couldn't this wait until after the ceremony? Wait? I almost laughed. I waited 3 years. Through bills I paid, insults I swallowed, erasures I pretended not to see. Tonight I stopped waiting. He breathed into the line. She's sobbing in the bathroom. What am I supposed to tell her? Tell her the woman she wanted to erase is no longer financing her performance, I said. Tell her people get married every day without swan sculptures and champagne fountains. This will destroy everything, Assam, he whispered. If one cancelled party can destroy everything, then what you built was tissue paper. Can we sit down tomorrow? Talk like adults? You told me tomorrow belongs to your wedding, I said. My deadline was tonight. I already acted. I can't fix this if you won't bend. I bent until I didn't recognize my reflection, I said. I'm standing now. You'll have to adjust to the new height. Silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally he exhaled, raw and young. I wish Dad were here. He'd know what to do. Walter's ring was cool against my skin. Your father taught me not to let anyone make me small, I said. Tonight I honored him. The phones quieted at last. I sat on the bed's edge and sipped tea that had gone lukewarm, the hum of the air unit filling spaces where grief used to echo. Their world was unraveling in panic. Mine felt stitched together with firm thread. Respect isn't a gift you demand, I thought. It's a debt you pay. I slid under the stiff white sheet and let the storm spend itself without me. Morning made a pale yellow rectangle across the wall. My phone was heavy with missed calls and wordy texts. I let them sit. I brewed fresh tea and steam curled from the cup, like proof that broken things still hold warmth. At 9 sharp, a knock rattled the door. Through the peephole, I saw Andrew in a wrinkled tuxedo shirt, bow tie limp around his neck, face chalky with no sleep. He looked younger and older at the same time. I opened but didn't step aside. "Shouldn't you be getting ready?" I asked. "We need to talk," he said. He nudged past me. I let him. Sometimes people need to walk into emptiness to understand it. He perched on the bed, rubbed his eyes. "She's locked in the bathroom. Her mother's threatening to fly home. Everything's falling apart." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "But this is the life you both scripted. You destroyed our wedding." His jaw worked like he wanted to chew the words and swallow them. "I withdrew my financial support," I answered. "Different action, different meaning. Over a guest room. Over dignity," I said. "Houses collapse without a real foundation. So do families. You can't sell the villa, Mom. That's our home." "It's our home," I corrected. "I own 30%. If I'm gone, my share goes with me." "You wouldn't." I already set the process in motion. He stared like I'd started speaking Norwegian. "We can't afford to buy you out. We don't." "Then it's time to live inside your means," I said. "That's what adults do." He looked at his hands. "You always helped us. Why stop now?" "Because help without gratitude becomes enabling," I said. "Because every dollar I gave became another brick in the wall you used to keep me out. Because I remembered my life has value independent of your emergencies." "She didn't mean what she said," he murmured. "Last night, she was stressed." "She meant it," I said gently, "and you didn't challenge it. That's what hurt most." He began to pace, tuxedo pants scuffed at the hem. "What do you want? Tell me how to fix this." "I want you to learn that money can't buy affection and silence can't buy respect," I said. "You let both slip through your fingers. So you're going to ruin us? You ruined yourselves by letting contempt stand. I'm simply drawing the line where it should have been painted years ago." He gripped the doorknob and hesitated. "She'll never forgive you." "She might. She might not," I said. "Forgiveness is her assignment. Boundaries are mine." After he left, the room felt larger, not lonelier. I wrapped both hands around the cup and listened to its tiny clicks as the porcelain cooled. Somewhere in town, bells would ring hollow above a ceremony without a banquet, without the illusion of endless money. They imagined my vanishing would be simple. Instead, it became the beginning of an education. I expected the afternoon to give me a pocket of quiet. It didn't. My phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, then read the caller ID, Margaret Howard, Sienna's mother. "Mrs. Howard," I answered carefully. Her tone surprised me, calm, composed, the way I used to speak to panicked families. "Miriam, I hope I'm not intruding. I thought you should hear what's happening on my side." Muffled airport announcements ghosted the line. She'd flown in to be swept along by festivities and instead met a barricaded bathroom and a full-body meltdown. "She called me hysterical," Margaret said, "begged me to wire money, said you're threatening to force a sale." "I'm not threatening," I said. "I've started." Margaret exhaled, a long, tired ribbon of air. I told her she should worry more about her marriage than her image. "She cares about appearances more than truth," I said. "She was raised that way," Margaret admitted. Her father couldn't bear to let consequences touch her. When she totaled the car at 16, he hired a shark to clear it off her record. When she blew through her allowance, he made calls. I hoped marriage would mature her. Instead, she found a man willing to let her keep playing. The honesty startled me. I'd looked at Margaret like she was all polish and practiced nods. Turns out she was a mother who'd been afraid of letting her daughter fall. "This morning she demanded I cover the buyout," Margaret added. "Said I owed her." "What did you tell her?" "Absolutely not." If she wants a home, she can learn the price of respect. Her words could have come from my own mouth. You might be the first person to tell her no, I said. Maybe, she admitted. She's terrified, not of humiliation, but of the idea that consequences might finally be real. For years, I'd thought consequences were cruel. Truth is, they're protection that comes later than we want and earlier than we think we're ready for. I can't decide, I confessed. Part of me wants to let them struggle until they learn. Part of me wonders if I should sell my share at a discount to give them a chance. And then there's the petty part, imagining I'll watch them sweat. Margaret let out a dry laugh. You sound like me 20 years ago. I picked rescuing. It made her weak. Don't repeat my mistake. Her candor stung because it fit. Sometimes the kindest thing is refusing to interfere, she said before we hung up. After the call, I stared at the cup. The steam had fled hours ago, but the porcelain held the scent of tea. 2 mothers in different zip codes had drawn the same line for grown children who had mislaid their gratitude. For the first time since Walter died, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone. I should have anticipated the next tactic. When entitled people feel a wall, they look for a hammer with a badge. By Monday morning, a notice arrived. Andrew and Sienna had petitioned for a competency review, claiming I was no longer able to manage my affairs. It was a nasty twist, one that bit deeper than Sienna's whisper. I'd spent a lifetime making careful decisions. Now my own son questioned whether I could think clearly. I walked into the courthouse with my folder hugged to my chest. Inside were Catherine's documents, copies of the deed, and a ledger in my handwriting listing 3 years of bills I had covered. Utilities, insurance, HOA fees, repairs, sudden emergencies that were rarely sudden and never the last. The investigator who met me couldn't have been more than 40. Kind eyes, professional posture. Mrs. Hale, do you understand why you're here? My son and his fiancée believe boundaries equal confusion, I said evenly. He struggled not to smile. Let's begin. I spread the ledger across the table. Here's $150,000 in household expenses I paid, necessities, not luxuries, because their lifestyle outpaced their income. He traced the columns, nodding at the dates and notations. You keep precise records. Nurses chart, or people get hurt, I said. I apply that rule to my life, too. I slid over the deed. This certifies 30% ownership, not a gift, an investment. He asked about my days. I told him about medications I manage, the car I drive, the book club I volunteer with at Maplewood Community, the plan to join the walking trail when the first heat breaks. My life was not shrinking. It was unfolding. Then I did something unplanned. I found Walter's last voicemail and let a few seconds play. Remember, Mir. The rest I kept in my heart. The investigator's expression softened. Your husband? The man who trusted me to carry our life, I said. His voice steadies mine. He closed the folder and met my eyes. Mrs. Hale, you're not only competent, you're careful. Relief arrived not as trumpets, but as warmth moving into my chest, the way steam curls back from a teacup. Their accusation had failed, but more importantly, someone had said aloud what I already knew. My mind was clear. My boundaries were real. When I stepped into the Arizona sun, the sky looked like a stainless pan, hard and bright. Texts pinged, concern wearing a mask, orders dressed as please. I slid the phone into my bag and turned Walter's ring with my thumb. We are not small, I told him. Not anymore. Catherine's conference room smelled faintly of lemon oil and paper. I arrived early with my folder and the steady weight of the ring. I wasn't there to punish a pageant. I was there to protect a lifetime. Drew and Sienna arrived late. Sienna's eyes were puffy, mascara clinging like regret. Drew studied the carpet, Let's be clear, Catherine said, legal pad poised. Mrs. Hale has documents and a proposal. It's a misunderstanding, Sienna began. It's a boundary, I said, placing deed copies on the table. I own 30%. The court affirmed my capacity this morning. I'm exercising rights I've held since closing. We never saw that, Drew muttered. You would have, Catherine said mildly, if you'd returned the acknowledgments. Sienna twirled a lock of hair around one finger. There must be a way to fix this without tearing us apart. Family isn't a word you dust off when you need money, I said. Family is respect when nobody's watching. I slid forward the ledger. 3 years of bills, $150,000, documented. Not a rumor, not a sob story, evidence. We were going to pay you back, Drew said, voice thin. You never offered a plan, I answered. Outline your terms, Catherine prompted. Fair market for my equity is between $180 and $200 after you account for the mortgage, I said. I'll accept $120,000 for a full buyout, discounted, but conditional. Sienna's hope lit like a match. What conditions? First, Sienna obtains employment within 60 days and maintains it for 2 years, part-time to start, full-time by day 60. Second, the SUV is sold within 30 days and proceeds applied to debt. Third, a written budget. No restaurants. No discretionary shopping for 24 months. Audit subscriptions. Fourth, monthly financial check-ins with Catherine for 2 years. Bank statements, pay stubs, credit reports. Fifth, no new debt without prior approval during that period. That sounds like probation, Drew said. It sounds like adulthood, I said. It's scaffolding you didn't build. And if I don't want to share bank statements? Sienna's tone sharpened. Then the offer disappears, I said. We list the house. Can she force a sale? Drew asked Catherine. Yes, she said. Co-owners can petition. It's unpleasant. It's lawful. We're family, Sienna protested. Exactly, I said. Which means respect. Respect is paying debts instead of posting marble counters bought with someone else's savings. Respect is apologizing before calling the courthouse about my mind. Respect is never telling a woman to vanish from the family her hands built. Color drained from Drew's face. Mom, please. I softened my tone, not my spine. This is mercy with a backbone, I said. I could demand full value and file today. Instead, I'm offering a path that keeps a roof over your heads while you learn to live beneath it. You talk about mercy while holding a knife, Sienna snapped. Boundaries cut away rot, I said. That's where healing starts. Catherine's pen scratched. Buyout at $120,000 with conditions, compliance monitored monthly, default triggers demand for balance or listing, no new lines of credit, attorney's fees to the violator. Drew blew out breath. How do we live like that? By cooking at home, I said. By canceling memberships you touch twice a month. By admitting your income is 8 while your lifestyle pretends it's 12. Arithmetic isn't an insult. It's a map. You've changed, Sienna said, watching me like I'd grown an extra layer of skin. I remembered, I answered. Catherine printed a draft. They conferred by the window. When they returned, Sienna tried one more gambit. I won't sell my car. I need it for appearances. You need groceries more than appearances, I said. Payments can feed you for a month. What if we pay more over longer? Drew asked. $130 over 5 years. No, I said. $120 within 90 days. If you can't secure funds, listing begins on day 91. Try a bank, if a bank believes you. I won't be your lender. Our credit will suffer, Sienna said. It's already suffering, I said. Better to learn arithmetic now than let interest teach you later. Drew's voice dropped. What about holidays? Seeing you? You're not exiled, I said. When you treat me like a mother and not a wallet, you'll find my door open. It simply won't revolve for fires you light yourselves." Sienna's eyes grew watery. "I'm sorry for what I said that night." "Thank you," I said. "An apology starts a thing. It doesn't finish it." We read every line. I added a clause about attorney's fees. Catherine initialed. Drew signed first. His hand shook. Sienna hesitated, then scrawled a flourish where steadiness should have been. The notary's stamp clicked. A small, decisive sound. The legal portion had ended. The human portion had not. "Will you come to dinner when this is over?" Sienna asked. "Not yet," I said. "Lunch in a public place first. Baby steps." She nodded. Drew hugged me. I let him. I didn't let him mistake the gesture for surrender. After they left, Catherine studied me. "This is either generous or severe," she said. "I can't decide." "Maybe both," I answered. "Maybe justice looks like that when love refuses to evaporate." I gathered my folder. In the pocket lay the folded letter from the hotel, the one that began, "Dear Andrew, dear Sienna." I read the first line, "Should I save you or let you swim?" I slid it back unsent. Outside, the Arizona sky was a sheet of blue glass. I pictured the villa not as a trophy, but as a mirror reflecting the best and worst of us. Today I tilted it, just enough to let the light hit differently, not to blind, but to reveal. At the curb, a young couple wrangled a stroller into a trunk and laughed when it finally clicked. I wanted that for my son and the woman he'd chosen. Partnership that strained and then settled. If they learned it under the weight of reality, so be it. I drove back to my one-bedroom in Maplewood community, a senior complex with quiet hallways that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. Dinner would be simple. Tea would be hot. I intended to walk the trail behind the building until my breath found a rhythm that felt like prayer. Whether they swam or the house sold, both outcomes were honest. Both were better than living small inside a showplace I had paid for while being told to disappear. At a red light, I pressed the accelerator, and Walter's ring warmed on my finger. I didn't need the voicemail to hear him anymore. I heard myself, a woman who had replaced silence with structure, softness with backbone, hope with a plan. I didn't sleep much the night after we signed. Rest doesn't come easy the day you stop being everyone's soft landing. But instead of dread, there was a clean steadiness in my chest, like the air in a ward at 6 a.m., when the night's chaos has been charted and the day hasn't yet asked for anything foolish. By breakfast, I'd already made a list, not because I wanted to hover, but because lists are how careful people keep promises, to others and to themselves. At the top, I wrote in block letters, "Boundaries are doors, not walls. Lock, unlock on purpose." Beneath that, 3 items. Confirm Pinecrest cancellation penalties are paid and receipts filed. Follow up with Catherine on buyout timelines, escrow instructions, and default language. Start my own life on purpose. Trail at 5, book club Thursday. Call with Penny about the Senior Center Craft Drive. I brewed tea, set out my chipped porcelain cup, and breathed in steam that smelled like focus. The ring on my hand warmed as if Walter were reminding me that resolve can be quiet and still be steel. Before noon, Pinecrest sent a curt invoice with line items that made my eyes water. Late cancellation fees, food losses, staff hours. I paid it. There are costs worth swallowing so you don't choke on something worse later. I saved the receipt in a folder labeled Wedding, Cancelled, Proof, and slid it beside the deed copies and ledger like a patient file I might need to present again. By late afternoon, Catherine emailed a clean checklist. The executed memorandum, the notary's journal entry, the monitoring instructions Sienna and Drew had initialed. The subject line read, "Buyout, commenced." The body was simpler. 90 days starts today. That evening, I laced my shoes and walked the loop behind the Maplewood buildings with my neighbor, Ruth, who talked about her tomato plants and never once asked about the wedding. It felt like having my pulse taken without any judgment attached. The first week was loud from their side. Calls, texts, voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize, all trying to thread the needle between apology and argument. I answered none of them. I had decided at Catherine's table that communication would run along one track now, documented, measurable, housed neatly in a folder, and not in my chest. 3 days after we signed, an email arrived from Margaret Howard. No greeting, no fluff, just a line, "I won't wire money." Making her stand is the only kindness I haven't tried. I typed, "Thank you. Standing with you from over here." Then, because old habits are stubborn, I added a small heart and deleted it before I hit send. Restraint belongs to more than budgets. On day 7, the first monitoring packet came through Catherine. Copies of utility statements and a blurry screenshot of a mortgage payment confirmation. A scan of their insurance due notice with a highlighter slash across the date. A bank statement that made me pinch the bridge of my nose, not because of the numbers, which were bad, but because of the story they told. The story was always the same. Groceries spiked after mid-month. A random midday restaurant charge when either exhaustion or ego took over. An online order that read like stress. Reached for a package. Catherine's note was crisp. Acknowledged. Missing. Income proof. Subscription audit. SUV sales status. I texted Ruth and asked whether she still had that simple budget sheet we'd used at the senior center last winter. She dropped off a photocopy in my mailbox, a neat grid with columns for due dates and checkboxes that satisfy the part of a person that likes the sound of complete. I sent the template to Catherine and asked her to forward it to Sienna with the note, "Use this or an equivalent. Keep it boring. Boring pays bills." Day 10 brought the first big test. The HOA fee cleared 2 days late. A small late penalty tacked on, the kind that feels like insult more than injury. Sienna called me for the first time since the conference room. I let it go to voicemail and listened later as her voice tried to sound businesslike and kept slipping. "Hi, Miriam. I wanted to document that the HOA posted late. We misjudged timing. I've put the next due date into the calendar. I will... Hold on." There was a clatter as if she dropped the phone. When she came back, her words were smaller. "I know this is stupid. I'm learning. That's all." I wrote, "HOA, late. Penalty noted on my copy," and filed the audio. I didn't call back. If I started coaching, I'd be in their house by sundown, and I'd promised myself I would never again live there as a ghost with a credit card. Day 13 brought the SUV listing, brittle with optimism at a price that was a rumor. Catherine CC'd me. I replied to Catherine only. They'll learn faster from time than from me. Catherine wrote back a single check mark. Day 17. A second listing appeared at a number the market might consider a conversation starter. Day 21, they sold it. Loss acknowledged in a curt email, with a scan of the title transfer and the deposit slip. There are classrooms built from losses. You can smell the ink of the lesson on the paperwork. The proceeds went to the highest interest card as agreed. For the first time, I felt something that wasn't grim determination. It wasn't pride yet, but the road widened a fraction. Sienna's job hunt was a different kind of medicine. Bitter going down, healing if taken steadily. I watched it through the packet trail, a photo of a cardigan and flats in front of a mirror, captioned appropriate, that Catherine wisely did not forward, a typed list of places across Scottsdale and Phoenix, dental offices, pediatric clinics, eye care groups. Notes scrawled like she'd learned there's a difference between casting and fishing. Left resume. Manager was kind. Says call Tuesday, then interview Thursday. Front desk. Learn software? The sentence had a question mark and a hopeful underline. Day 24, a voicemail came through the monitoring line in Sienna's careful cadence. Front desk at Desert View Dental wants a second interview. They asked about punctuality and handling frustrated people. I said I used to plan events. A beat. I didn't mention that those events were paid for with someone else's money. For the first time, the humor didn't come brittle. It sounded like a splinter working itself out. I stood at my kitchen counter staring at the ridiculous budget magnet on my fridge, a cartoon cactus with a speech bubble that says, "Stick to your plan," and caught myself wanting to text, "Wear the flats, bring a pen, ask for written procedures." I made tea instead. If my advice showed up now, it would cancel her pay stub later. Day 28. The second packet arrived thin and honest. A part-time offer from Desert View Dental at $18.75 an hour for 24 hours a week, with a review in 60 days, and a possibility of full-time if she hit the marks. A W-4 with her handwriting, the kind of form people don't photograph unless they need proof for someone who expects it. A bus route printout highlighted in yellow from Maple Ridge to the office, because the SUV had already gone to a family with a baby seat on Craigslist. I pressed my fingers to the paper like a pulse. It beat. I waited for the other shoe. Anger, a plea, a detour, because growth rarely moves in a straight line. It came on day 32. The insurance premium bounced once, then cleared with an overdraft fee. Sienna's voice on the log was tight, documenting that our account went negative for 12 hours because I miscalculated the deposit timing. I got the debit card out of the danger zone by noon. I know better now. She didn't ask me to fix it. She was learning the cruel math of when even more than how much. That same evening, Drew left a message I filed under WOW. He'd started a spiral notebook with a column for receipts and meals. He'd learned that chopping onions calms a person, and that rice feeds more than a complaint. "We ate at home 8 nights in a row," he said, voice a mixture of proud and embarrassed. "Turns out, you can bake chicken in 50 different ways. We're on way number 2. I set the notebook image he sent beside my ledger. Numbers are only half the truth. The other half is posture. At the end of month 1, we met in Catherine's office for the first check-in. The blinds made neat stripes on the table. Drew came in 2 minutes early with a manila folder and a look I recognized from shift change. Tired, alert, no ornament left. Sienna arrived on time in black sneakers and a cardigan with a snag on the sleeve. She didn't make a show of covering it. Catherine greeted us like a charge nurse. Let's see what we're dealing with. We started with income. Sienna slid 2 pay stubs across the table like they were fragile. I watched her fingers as she let go. That's how you know whether an object is symbolic. Your hands don't want to release it. Net to checking, Catherine said. Good. She ticked a box. Sienna's shoulders lowered 1/2 inch. Mortgage? Paid, Drew said, and showed the confirmation. HOA? Paid, Sienna said. On time this month. Insurance? Cleared, Drew said. No fee. Subscriptions? Sienna handed over a handwritten list with lines through 4 streaming services, meal kits, and a gym membership they'd use twice a month to feel virtuous. She'd written library in all caps at the bottom and drew a small square next to it like a charm. I smiled before I could stop myself. She saw it and looked down quickly, as if even that might be too much candy this early in recovery. Restaurants? Catherine asked. Sienna's voice lost its last ribbon of vanity. 0. I packed leftovers and ate them even when I wanted to throw them away. If you think that last part isn't work, You haven't met the part of yourself that believes comfort can be purchased in clamshell containers. Catherine opened a laptop and pulled up a spreadsheet that would become a map for them. Target budget in one column, actual in another. She typed as she spoke. Restaurants, 0 for 90 days, then 50. Clothing, 50. Job-related only. Streaming, 0. Gym, 0. Credit cards, minimums plus snowball with SUV proceeds. Her voice was the click of railroad ties under a train going the speed of honesty. Sienna stared at the numbers as if they were a foreign language she was finally deciding to learn. Drew rubbed a thumb along the seam of the table. If we do all this, he said, slow and flat, we still barely make it. You barely making it is you paying for the past, I said gently. Margins are supposed to be tight right now. You didn't land here in 30 days. You won't leave in 30. Catherine added the last line with a firm tap. Employment, Sienna. Full-time by day 60. We all looked at it as if staring would make it less demanding. Demands don't soften under a gaze. You either show up or you make a story. Showing up was the better bargain. We signed the printout. Drew steady, Sienna with a quick swallow before her pen touched paper. I added my initials in the corner. Acknowledgement, without ownership. In the hallway, Drew lingered by the window. I keep thinking about Dad, he said. He would have known how to fix this. Your father fixed things by telling the truth, I said. Tell the truth about money, and you're halfway done. Sienna waited near the elevator, eyes ringed, but clearer. I hate being this person, she blurted when Drew stepped away to schedule next month's check. I don't want to be looked at like charity. You won't always be this person, I said, but you have to be her long enough to learn. She searched my face. Do you hate me? No, I said. I hate entitlement. Work shaves it off if you let it. She nodded once. The elevator dinged. She didn't reach for a hug. That restraint was new, too. Week 5 drew out like taffy. It always does. The adrenaline of the first change runs out and the boredom arrives, the kind that sends people back to old habits if they don't plan for it. Sienna learned the software at the dental office by writing steps in a spiral notebook. Greet. Insurance. Confirm. Seat. The hygienist taught her the difference between a room that feels rushed and a room that feels ready. She made mistakes and didn't decorate them with alibis. Once, a patient arrived without valid insurance and raised his voice. Sienna's impulse was to cut the fee because this is humiliating. The office manager pulled her aside and said, "Compassion lives inside policy. Learn the policy." The next day, Sienna wrote a note of apology to the team and copied a paragraph from the manual into her notebook, like you copy a verse you need to live by. She called the monitoring number in the evening to log hours worked and bus transfers made. Her voice was tired in a way work makes you tired. Honestly, not dramatically. "My feet feel like hot bricks," she said once, half laughing. I didn't know calves could have opinions. "Hydrate," I told the air, resisting the urge to call back and list stretches. I allowed myself one text to Catherine, advise her to drink water before bed. Catherine replied, "On it. Boundaries, like stitches, aren't meant to be tugged once placed." Drew's messages changed shape too. Where there had been bargaining, there was record. He sent photos of grocery receipts lined up with neat paper clips, and once a picture of a pan of rice and beans with onions browned to sweetness. The caption read only, "Tuesday. No emoji, no plea. Proof." On day 45, a small celebration crept in sideways. A crooked photo in the clinic break room of a paper envelope with Sienna H typed on it, a corner lifted to show a stub, and the bottom edge of Sienna's face. No contouring. just a surprised half smile like she'd remembered what it feels like to earn something you can hold. I filed it beside my ledger and drew an arrow from wages to the credit card with the ugliest interest. The number moved by inches. Early inches matter more than people think because they teach a person that movement is possible when the mind has decided it isn't. Day 57 tried to blow the whole thing sideways. The air conditioner at the villa died. In Phoenix, that's not inconvenience. That's crisis with a thermostat. Sienna called the monitoring line, voice shaking not with rage but with reality. We've had 3 quotes. The cheapest is still a gut punch. Catherine scheduled an emergency call. I listened while they laid out options. A home warranty they hadn't renewed would have covered most of it. They'd opted instead for a streaming service that cost a fraction and bought them nothing but noise. Now the bill for the noise was due in sweat. In the end, they chose a modest unit and a payment plan that cut into the snowball for the quarter. Progress slowed. It didn't stop. That, too, is part of adult arithmetic. That weekend, Margaret texted me a photo of Sienna asleep on her couch with a manual open on her stomach and a highlighter uncapped in her hand. The message read, "She's learning the difference between tired and empty. Thank you for not rushing in." I typed, "You're doing it too." I didn't add the heart this time. We didn't need it. Day 60 came and went. Sienna's clinic manager extended her to full time. The email came in the packet like a small banner without confetti. Effective Monday, 48 hours. Assistant scheduling coordinator in training. Attached was a list. Supply ordering, patient flow, backorder monitoring. She had responsibilities now that would annoy her and shape her at the same time. My neighbor Ruth laughed when I told her. "You've got them doing exactly what you did for decades," she said, slicing a tomato, the kind of knife work that knows what it's doing, keeping other people's chaos from running the place. I thought of Walter's ring, of his voice saying, "Don't let them make you smaller," and realized that what I was doing wasn't about making anyone else small. It was about letting people grow to their actual size on their own legs. When the second monthly check-in came, the air in Catherine's office felt different, not victorious, sober. That's the feeling you get when a patient turns the corner but still has 3 nights of antibiotics ahead. We went line by line. Restaurants, 0. Streaming, 0. Clothing, $38 for 2 blouses that didn't pretend to be anything other than blouses. Snowball, paid despite the ACD tour, but smaller, with a note in the margin, adjusted for unit. Catherine nodded. "Thin margins," she said, pen tapping. "Real movement." Sienna held out 2 pay stubs without flourish, the way you hand a tool to a person who asked for it, because you're on a team and the job requires it. Drew slid an envelope of cash toward the Min-Plo snowball column. "Groceries came in under for the first time," he said, "that mixture of pride and confusion that comes when you realize food tastes better, when your stomach isn't clenched around a secret." We signed again. We didn't linger for hugs or speeches. Accountability shortens meetings. Outside on the sidewalk, the heat hit my face like it always does, a reminder that the desert tells the truth even when you'd like it to be coy. Sienna hovered. "I wanted to quit on day 2, she said in that new voice that had sand in it. "I didn't," she swallowed. Day 3 was worse. Day 5 was better. Yesterday, I moved a nervous teenager ahead of a tattoo touch-up because she had to get back to school before last period. I logged it. I apologized to the person I bumped. Nobody died. The room felt better. "Policy with mercy," I said. She nodded. "Policy first." When she asked, carefully, if I would meet her for coffee next week at a diner 2 blocks from the clinic, I didn't say yes immediately. The old me would have. The old me would have said yes on a wave of relief and called it grace. Instead, I counted to 4 in my head the way I taught patients after surgery. Yes, I said. Next week, lunch, public place. We'll practice careful voices. She laughed softly and then surprised me by not stepping forward. May I hug you? She asked. You may, I said. Brief, true. Not a treaty, an acknowledgement of work in progress. That evening, back at Maplewood, I took the folded letter from my drawer and smoothed it. Should I save you or let you swim? I wrote a second sentence below it, small and precise. You are swimming. I will watch and wave, not drag. I tucked the paper into the chipped cup and set Walter's ring on top for a minute. The metal warmed the way a hand warms another without turning it into something it isn't. The diner was all cracked vinyl and coffee that smelled like mornings. I arrived early and took a booth where the light did most of the talking. Sienna came in on time, wearing the sneakers that had learned the shape of her days. I said things I can't justify, she began without ceremony. Every patient I greet is somebody's mother. It's embarrassing that I needed a name tag and a schedule to see that. Accountability is the first kindness, I said. Consistency is the second. I'm learning consistency the way I learned the software, she said. Badly, then better. She slid a small envelope across the table. Inside were the month's budget lines she'd written by hand, the 2 most recent pay stubs, and a list of due dates with small boxes she'd checked. One by one, in pencil, the way people write things when they're ready to erase excuses and not the truth. I know you'll see all this through Catherine, she said. I wanted to hand it to you myself. Thank you, I said. This is the work. We ordered eggs and toast, coffee for 2, water automatically, no soft drinks. Simple food that helps voices stay in the same key. She ate like someone who'd left a shift standing. Would you come to dinner sometime? She asked when the plates were mostly empty. Not fancy, just us. I want to make lasagna, from scratch, not a jar. After 1 more month of staying the course, I said. Lunch is for now. It helps us both be careful. She exhaled, not dramatics. Relief. I can do a month. We paid separately without comment. Outside, a paper flyer lifted off the curb and sailed a foot before settling against a lamppost. She reached for a hug and paused in a way that told me she understood that permission matters even in small gestures. May I? She asked again. You may, I said, and felt the hug for what it was, gratitude that hadn't been purchased. Back home, I poured tea and looked out at the short trail between the maple trees in the complex courtyard. 2 women I now recognized from the 5 p.m. loop waved, and I waved back with the hand that wore Walter's ring. I thought about the difference between quiet and silenced. Quiet is chosen. Silenced is imposed. For 3 years I'd been the latter. In the last 60 days I'd learned the former, and the room inside my head had more air. Before bed, I opened my ledger. Under the totals for month 2, I wrote a single sentence. Thin margin, thick backbone. I dated it and closed the cover like I would a chart after a long shift. On day 75, the packet contained something that felt like a shift in posture. A brief email from Sienna's office manager with the subject Good Judgment. In 1 paragraph, she described a late afternoon that was rolling toward frustration. Sienna had pre-seated 2 patients to free a hygienist, called to confirm an earlier slot for a teenager who'd broken a veneer, and documented both exceptions in the system. She is learning to be anticipatory, not reactive, the email read. Keep this up, and she'll make a strong coordinator. I printed it and slipped it behind the most recent pay stub, a different kind of receipt. Day 83, a text from Margaret lit up my screen at dawn. Coffee with S yesterday. No photos. Toast only. We spoke like women in a kitchen at 6 a.m. I apologized for rescuing her past the age where it did anything but hurt. We cried and didn't use it for leverage. I sat with that for a long minute. Repair done quietly is the only kind that lasts. When day 90 arrived, we met again in Catherine's conference room, and for the first time the air didn't smell like impending triage. It smelled like paper and lemon oil and a job being done. Catherine set an escrow folder on the table. Drew placed a bank check, $120,000, on top without theatrics. My breath caught anyway. Cashing in your own dignity doesn't buy anything you want. Cashing in a share you were owed buys back air. This is the buyout in full, Drew said. Catherine verified the amount, the signatures, the source. She slid the check toward me but kept a finger on it until we all nodded. Conditions remain in place for the balance of the 24 months, she reminded. Monitoring continues. Any default reverts to the demand clause. Sienna looked at me with an expression I had not yet seen from her. Something past pride, past apology. Respect's quieter cousin. Thank you for offering a discount, she said. I know you could have asked for more. I asked for enough, I said. Enough teaches better than everything. Catherine moved us through the closing steps. Notary, copies, confirmations. I endorsed the check and handed it to my bank's night deposit envelope when I left, my hand steady. This money wasn't a windfall. It was restoring an account I'd let go, overdrawn for too long. In the parking lot, I paused and felt the Phoenix sun look me squarely in the face. I closed my eyes and let it. When I opened them, I saw a boy on a scooter figuring out how to be brave in small spurts. A woman untangling a dog leash with a patience that said she knew there are knots you don't yank. I slipped Walter's ring around my finger, felt it click into its groove, and knew I had just done something I wished I'd known how to do 10 years ago. The second guessing lasted a breath. Then the gratitude arrived and stayed. That evening, Sienna's voicemail arrived. Documenting buyout transfer in full. Also, I made lasagna. Sauce from tomatoes in a can and stubbornness. I'll wait a month like we agreed. She laughed, surprised at herself. I won't use a jar next time either. I set my chipped cup on the table, took the folded letter from its nest, and added one more line. Paid what was owed. Keeping what's mine. I tucked it back in and touched the ring to the rim like a benediction. In the weeks that followed, the pings on my phone changed character. Margaret sent quiet updates that didn't ask me to clap. Catherine issued tidy monthly notes with a footer word I loved, compliant. Drew texted a photo of onions browning in a pan with no caption at all. And Sienna, on a Tuesday when the air smelled like hot dust and possibility, messaged this. Teen chipped a tooth before a job interview. I found her an earlier slot. She said thank you and used my name. I clocked out on time, going to bed. When sleep came for me that night, it arrived the way it does when a ward is finally quiet. On soft shoes, with a chart tucked under its arm, ready to watch the monitors for a while so you, at last, can close your eyes. The morning of day 120 slipped into my life without trumpets, just steam curling from my chipped cup, the same way it had for months, and a small email in the monitoring packet that said more than a dozen apologies ever could. Subject, promotion. Body, effective immediately. Sienna Hale is promoted to scheduling coordinator. Full-time salary $48,000 annually. Eligible for benefits after 90 days. Performance review notes, reliable, proactive, empathetic with patience. I stared at the line until the letters blurred. Benefits, reliability. Words that had never stuck to her before were now pinned to her name in black and white. That evening my phone buzzed with a text from Sienna. Lasagna's ready. Not a jar. You said wait a month. It's been one. Will you come? I read it 3 times, my thumb hovering. My instinct was to rush toward the olive branch. After all, hadn't I dreamed of family dinners where nobody kept score? But boundaries mean your first yes can't be careless. I typed back, yes, dinner, but just us 3. No show, no extras, simple. Her reply came quick, agreed, just us. 6 p.m. tomorrow. Walking up the stone path of the villa felt strange, like approaching a house that once pretended to be mine but never was. The new air conditioner hummed softly. I noted the sound with satisfaction. They'd paid for it themselves. Sienna opened the door in jeans and a flour-dusted t-shirt. No designer gown, no forced grin. It's not perfect, she said, leading me in. That's fine. Perfect doesn't feed people. On the table sat a pan of lasagna bubbling at the edges, garlic bread cut unevenly, a salad of lettuce and tomatoes that looked hand-tossed instead of catered. Drew set down 3 mismatched plates. I thought of the marble buffets, the canapes, the champagne fountains that had once defined their dream. This was better. We bowed our heads, not a polished prayer, just Drew mumbling thanks for food and family. My throat tightened, but I swallowed it with water before it could become spectacle. The lasagna was salty, heavy with cheese, the kind of meal you don't serve at receptions because it drips onto expensive dresses. It was delicious. Halfway through the meal, Sienna put her fork down. I know you don't trust words, but I want to try anyway. She met my eyes. When I told you to disappear, I thought I was protecting a picture I wanted, a picture where nothing looked old or messy or complicated. But what I really erased was the only steady thing we had. I let silence sit between us like a 4th guest. Then I said, pictures don't keep roofs over your head. People do. Drew's hand found hers on the table. We're learning. You're beginning, I corrected. Learning takes longer. 2 weeks later, Margaret invited me for coffee at her rental condo. She answered the door in slippers, hair pulled back, the veneer gone. I should have done what you did years ago, she admitted. You did what you thought kept her safe, I said, and crippled her instead. She poured coffee into plain mugs. I told Sienna last week that my bank account is closed for bailing her out. She cried like a child and then went back to work the next morning. We clinked mugs softly. Sometimes women our age don't need a toast, just a confirmation that we're still standing. Not everything smoothed. Month 5, Drew missed a snowball payment after forgetting to log overtime. Catherine's report flagged it in red. Instead of excuses, he emailed, error acknowledged. Payment doubled next cycle. Attached proof. Sienna called the monitoring line once in tears after a patient shouted at her for rescheduling. I wanted to quit. Instead, I stayed, logged it. Her voice steadied on the last word. That steadiness was worth more than the paycheck. By December, the villa looked different. No caterers, no towering trees trimmed by decorators. Just a modest spruce Sienna and Drew had cut from a lot and decorated with handmade paper stars. They invited me for Christmas Eve. I hesitated, then agreed. But only if the meal was theirs, not mine. Dinner was roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and 1 pie Sienna had baked herself. The crust sagged, the filling bubbled over, and it tasted like relief. Afterward, Drew handed me a small box. Inside was a silver frame with Walter's photo, finally placed where it belonged. I touched the glass, my throat tight. Thank you, I said. Simple as that. The months rolled forward. Monitoring continued. Each packet was thinner, not because they were hiding, but because there were fewer emergencies to record. Groceries balanced. Credit cards shrank. A savings column appeared, tentative but real. By month 12, Catherine's footer read, "On track, no defaults. Recommend reducing oversight to quarterly." Sienna texted me that night, "We're breathing. For the first time in years, we're breathing." At the 2-year mark, Catherine gathered us one last time. "Compliance complete," she said, tapping the folder. "All conditions satisfied. Debt-free within 6 months at current pace. Monitoring ends today." Drew reached across the table. "Mom, we don't deserve your forgiveness." "Forgiveness isn't the point," I said. "Respect is, and you've earned some back." Sienna's eyes filled. "Can we try again? Not as bank and beggar, as family." I thought of Walter's ring, of nights in a hotel room with a chipped cup and resolve, of Margaret's quiet confession, of lasagna baked with stubbornness. "We can try," I said, "but this time the table is mine too." Now when I sit at my small Maplewood kitchen table, I don't feel small. My ledger is closed, my accounts balanced, my boundaries intact. Sometimes Drew and Sienna join me for tea, bringing their own chipped mugs. We talk like people who know scars don't vanish, but they do stop bleeding. And every night, before I set Walter's ring on the dresser, I whisper the same words back to him. I didn't let them make me small, not anymore. If you've ever been told to disappear, remember, absence can be powerful when it's your choice, not theirs. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this story. If it touched your heart, please support it with a like. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. And now I'd love to know, what city are you listening from today? Share it in the comments. It means a lot to me to see where our community is coming together. See you in the next story. Take care of yourself, and remember, every woman deserves respect and a voice.